What it do, y'all, and welcome back to my channel. For today's video, I'm going to be doing a full face of makeup for my Heritage Month. In the past, I have taken the time to scour the internet to find brands that I was interested in or shop my personal collection to bring together a full face or fullish face of makeup to represent whatever the Heritage Month is. This month is June, which is Pride Month in the US, and this month I decided to do things slightly different just for my personal comfort. I didn't want to do something that I felt would be outside of my parameters, which is only an ally. So there is that. I will kind of go into my thought process as I do the makeup, and then I will give you guys some recommendations, although it won't be brand recommendations because I quite literally only found one brand that openly talked about the brand owner openly had addressed their sexuality. Now that I think about it, there are two other brands that I could have mentioned, which is Singe. So, and Jessica has openly talked about the fact that she is bi. And then also Made by Mitchell, he has openly talked about his partner. I just don't own anything by him. And so I don't want you guys to see this video and see the perspective that I've taken and think that I am not an ally. I truly am. But because I am an ally and because I feel like this community feels so much more hatred still to this day because of their sexuality, I wanted to kind of get to this perspective and kind of present this video in a unique way that I hope is respectful for who I am. So yeah, without that said, I don't want to get too far into it because I will be talking about it in the video. Let's just start. Hey guys, so I didn't really go into my perspective on doing this month's Heritage Month series, but I will kind of talk you guys through it as I apply the makeup, and as always, all of the makeup will be down below. So if you did not know, the month of June in the US is celebrated by Pride Month. Pride Month, if you did not know, in a very, very broad sense of the term and the word, is used to celebrate those who have a certain type of sexuality and their allies. Although their allies aren't truly celebrated, they're just kind of coming together with those who are a part of the Pride umbrella. Now, the umbrella is kind of identified in numerous different ways, depending on who you're talking to and also when you were talking to the person, because 10 years ago it was just LGBTQ, and now there are quite a few other letters at the end because more sexualities have been identified. I'm gonna say a blanket term right now. I am not a member of the queer community or LGBT community. I am just an ally. So any of the information that I may say, if it's outdated, I truly apologize. I just want to kind of tell my piece on why I'm doing this month's video the way that I'm doing it. As of right now, the way I know it, the term is LGBTQXI. I believe there may be a couple other letters at the end, but truly, I'm not the expert on this category, so I will try my best to put down below some articles with more of the updated information in the event that you want to be more informed, because like I said, I am not the expert. But when I do this whole kind of concept on me doing Heritage Month videos, mainly I wanted to do them because a lot of people or a lot of communities that have these months because they are a minority, and at one point they were looked over, they were abused, something to that effect. And unfortunately, those within the LGBTQXI community still get that. And I mean, don't get me wrong, there's so many different groups that still get that, but this community gets it in a way that is just unnecessary. And because I am not a member, and because people are quite literally being killed for something that you may not know without them identifying, I did not feel comfortable going through and kind of investigating whether a brand was owned or established by somebody who was in this community without them putting that information out there. And I already was trying to limit the purchasing that I made. I decided to just kind of make a unilateral decision and to not pick up anything new, but to identify and showcase brands that are created and run by men in the beauty community. If you did not know, another holiday that we celebrate in the month of June is Father's Day. And as with Mother's Day, just because you aren't a biological parent does not mean that you shouldn't be celebrated on these respective holidays. And so that's kind of how I'm going to tie in this concept, plus the idea of men in beauty. I feel like although not as unique as it was 90s or something, it's still a unique concept. There's very few men in beauty, whether they're an influencer or they're a brand owner, or even quite literally they're a makeup artist. They're still predominantly a minority in this industry. And for me, I still want to continue to highlight these minority groups, even as I try to be cognizant of not outing other people, not digging for people's truth unless they quite literally present that information to me and to their community. And so kind of that's where I settled when it came to preparing for this particular video. I just felt like this was the best way to kind of honor this community, as I'm not a member and I've not been a member of any of these communities other than Black History Month. That's pretty much the only community I have been a member of since I've been doing these Heritage Month. This is a way for me to kind of do an homage, I feel like, to all individuals that maybe don't get the representation or the recognition that they should. So as I will be taking the time to really play and put on makeup that are male owned, the brands, I still want to do something in celebration of Pride Month. And so as you guys know, I am a huge reader. I read a lot, and I have been reading pretty much like this since my first graduate program. I don't know what happened, probably because I was working at the library at the time, but my love of reading has just blossomed. And so what I want to do is kind of show some representation for the queer community by talking about the books that I've read that either show a queer relationship or are by a queer author that they've kind of made it known that they're queer. So the first book that I wish to highly recommend to you guys, I read it when I was still working at the library, and I kind of just had access to, you know, all of the products that are coming in quicker and all of that, is Love and Other Drugs. And this is by Anita Kelly. Anita Kelly on her Goodreads profile stated that she is queer. So not only does this book recommendation give you a queer author, it also gives you a queer story where we have a trans individual meeting a female presenting individual, and she is of course gay, and they meet during a cooking show. Now, this brought together quite a few different things that I loved. You have those enemies to lovers, but you also have the friend type of dynamic. You have that competition, being that they are quite literally in a cooking show, and it's like one of those like competitive ones. There was just so much about this book that I truly enjoyed. And the best part, at least the best part for me, was the fact that I find it so difficult to find books that are showcasing characters who are in the queer community that are not only male. And this was not only the opposite of that, it also was a contemporary romance. And so I just loved how refreshing this book was. The author wrote beautifully. I loved everything about this book. And I felt it. I felt it, which always tells me it is a good book when I feel it. So there is that. I feel like a classic that like everybody knows about, so I'm sure this won't be any news to anybody, is Pumpkin, and this is by Julie Murphy. To my understanding, Julie Murphy has not stated that she identifies as queer. But this book was just really, really cute. It is a young adult written novel, though, so do keep that in mind. Whew, oh my, I forgot. But this book showcases a teen, I believe it's represented in the state of Texas. And basically, he's misunderstood. He doesn't know how he fits in until one day where he decides to sign up for a drag competition. And he kind of gets like, I wouldn't say drunk, but basically drunk. He submits his tape and he does well. They actually ask him back. And so it's like this understanding of not only finding himself in drag, but finding himself as a person. And it's kind of, I love those like young kid type movies or type books. Don't believe they've actually made this into a movie, but this was just really, really cute. I absolutely loved it. This is one of, if not my favorite kind of queer high school book. I have read quite a few because when I was working in the library, that was actually the demographic that I worked with. But this one was phenomenal. I honestly can't say anything more about it. I really did love the other books in the series because this is in the Dumpling series. So if you've watched the movie Dumpling, that is of course based on the book. That's the first book in this series. And Pumpkin is the third one in the series. And I truly enjoyed it and everything else around it. I'm pretty sure I've already recommended this series, but just in case, the series name is I Hear the Sunspot. Now, quite a few of the actual books have not been translated into English. This is a Japanese based manga series, and this series is honestly a life. I love this series to death. Basically, we're following two college students, one who his mom is a chef, and he also has his grandfather around, and he's just kind of trying to find himself and just feels lost. Then we have one kid who is actually deaf, and he can't hear, but he needs somebody to go to his classes, take notes for him, so that he can basically know what they're saying in class and he can kind of be ready for the exams or whatever. And basically those two meet, and it's a slow burn. It's definitely a slow burn, and I don't typically love slow burns, but there's something about the connection that these two have that I truly enjoy. And you really see how one of the individuals really understands his sexuality along with their friendship and how that blossoms and changes and grows. And this is another favorite book that I would highly recommend. There are quite a few mangas that I would say actually do a really good job, in my opinion, of giving you that representation, which is very, I feel like, unique. I feel like there was a point in time which I very much find refreshing. There's so many. I also know it's a graphic novel, so it's not a manga, but this series brings in quite a bit more. It's not only giving you some queer representation, because there's a female romance in here, but you also have some BDSM type stuff. So if you're not into that, I wouldn't recommend this series. But if you are, the graphic novel series is Sunstone. There's so many volumes. I don't think I'm caught up to date. I think I just kind of lost the momentum when I was no longer working in the library. But this is another fantastic series that I definitely would recommend. Not only, and I wouldn't say that like the BDSM is so much that you can't get around it, because it is beginning at the beginning, but towards the last couple of volumes, you really are starting to learn more about the intrinsic interaction between the characters. And yeah, you got that stuff in the background, but it's not as big of a home hitter. So I would definitely recommend that series. There's also a fantasy series that I don't know how I found out about the series, but I read it through my Kindle, and it's Cloaked in Shadow, and it basically brings some fantastical elements with a romance between two male presenting characters. And it's another one that I truly enjoyed reading. I binged read it. And if you're somebody who prefers to read more fantasy, not necessarily a whole bunch of romance, I would say this is more of that like fantasy romance genre that you could probably get down with if you give it a shot and if you're interested in reading any queer romance. I believe I've already talked about this book, and it's called Upright Woman Wanted. This is a fantastic book. It's very short. I think it may be 200 pages, if that. And basically in the 200 pages, you're reading about kind of a futuristic cowboy type setting in which women have to move on these, like, I don't want to call them ships, but women have to transport the books through these communities as the librarians, and these librarians happen to be queer. And I just enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. It was a quite quick read, because I pretty much sit down and I'm reading at least 100 pages at a time. So it was a quick read for me, but I really enjoyed it. And so much so that I'm pretty sure this is the second time I recommended this series to y'all. So highly recommend. And I just want to take a quick interlude on all of the book recommendations to talk about the brand that I just put on my eyes. This is about face. When I happened to like initially be looking for brands to showcase in this video, I looked on Ulta and they had quite a few brands highlighted in their Pride Month kind of presentation. If you don't know, Ulta tends to do this where they will showcase or highlight certain brands that have anything to do with like a heritage month. They highlight this brand because the owner identifies openly as queer, and so that's why I felt comfortable showcasing this brand in this video, because it was openly presented. And yeah, I just wanted to kind of give you guys that caveat, because that is the only brand that has a female presenting owner and creator that I will be kind of openly be using in today's look. But yeah, I was another great book. I don't do a lot of kind of cowboy books at all. I also at the time wasn't doing a lot of kind of futuristic reading. That was just not something for me, but I truly have enjoyed it. Another author off rip that I have recommended now countless times, and I will just take the opportunity to recommend once again, is River Solomon. I have read everything that they have written that I can get my grubby little hands on. They are fantastic Afro-futuristic writer. I mean, the concepts that they come up with are just astounding to me. And I could only, not that I am a writer, but I could only wish to write as well as they do. And the concepts, the way that they kind of take history and add an element to it, is just, it's so phenomenal. So phenomenal. So yeah, I really wanted to highlight them, because even though I talk about them a lot, what is too much when it comes to talking about an author that you think is good? By the way, I'm playing with my first Tom Ford quad. If you've never gone to a CCO, highly recommend. I happened to go to a CCO to pick up a fragrance that I saw was available for an insane deal. this past weekend, and they happen to have this quad and another quad from Tom Ford available for, once again, in my opinion, an insane discount. And not only was it having like their normal discount, they also had an even bigger discount because Father's Day, it was like Father's Day weekend. So of course I picked it up, and now I'm trying it for the first time. These shimmers aren't amazing. I understand now why the clerk was kind of trying to talk me off of this. It's not the greatest. Okay, I wouldn't say this is my best eyeshadow look, but I think it looks pretty, and I think I could pull this off for like an everyday look, which it's going to be today, because I actually think I'm gonna leave the house today because I got some things I need to get done. But let's keep going forward. There are a couple other books that I really wanted to recommend. If you are into YA or young adult novels and you want a male romance, my favorite that I would recommend for like the actual romance, not like a coming of age story, which I feel Pumpkin is more like, this is more of an actual male romance. It is Date Me, Bryson Keller. I love this book. There's so many books I feel like that just don't hit it on the nail when it comes to this type of romance. This one has truly enemies to lovers. It has a coming out story. It has you like finding yourself and kind of fully accepting who you are, all wrapped up into this book. And then of course finding love. So I absolutely love this book. And then there's one more that I really want to recommend. It is called The Weight of the Stars. This is another YA or young adult novel. In this novel, they showcase two girls. They're both of high school age, and they both have an infatuation with the stars. In one girl's case, her mother went into space and kind of never came back. And then in the other case, I can't remember why, but she was like obsessed, whereas the other girl didn't want anything to do with this guy. She hated this guy. It was like a whole thing. I think like the other girl, the father somehow was involved in space. And so you see them coming together, they're working together to accomplish some things, and of course they fall in love. And it's such a cute one. Once again, like I said, I find it very hard, in my opinion, to find either true female romances or two female presenting individuals, or even, you know, any kind of combination where it's queer but there's at least one female involved. I find it extremely hard to find those novels. And in, you know, working in the library, I used to talk to my coworkers about that. And some of them would mention the fact that, yeah, it's hard to find that because a lot of the readers that are reading this are women. A lot of women read romance, and apparently it's harder for a woman who is straight to read a female romance than to read a male romance. I don't know if I'm just unique or what, but I don't find it harder at all. I find that love is love, in my opinion, and you kind of move forward. You move forward and you go with it. So yeah, anyways, that being said, I would love to hear down below if you guys have any recommendations for queer books, queer authors. I know I kind of veered away with all of the queer authors, but once again, I'm not in the business of kind of outing people. If people present that information like on their Goodreads account or whatever, then I am fair game to absorb that information and keep it in the backlog of my image, in my head, for when I am preparing to read kind of queer authors or queer books that are presented to me. But I'm not the type of person that's gonna go searching, and I've done that same kind of perspective when it comes to the other months. The difference is I feel like people are more comfortable presenting their heritage than their sexuality, because yeah, you can be hated for your heritage, but at the end of the day, your heritage is your heritage. Not saying your sexuality is not your sexuality. In my opinion, it is, but I feel like the hatred there is just unnecessary, and it's so much more than, oh, you're queer. It's like a true hatred. It's not like something else that people have used to justify with other hatreds that they've had for people's hair. Okay, well, I feel like I've rambled on towards the end there. I feel like I was able to give you guys a nice, quite a few book recommendations. There's so many other books that I could recommend to you all, and I think I might start doing a little bit more book recommendations on my shorts, just so that you guys can kind of see what I'm reading and what I would recommend to you all, especially because I don't think I have my Goodreads linked in my description box anymore. So I think that's going to be the route that I go. I apologize if this was not the direction that you expected me to take for this month's Heritage Month, but this is the direction that I personally felt comfortable with, and at the end of the day, this is my channel and I want to do what I feel comfortable with. So as always, everything that I have on my face will be listed and linked down below. I will also do my best to actually link down below all of the book recommendations that I have, and I'll probably have them linked to maybe Barnes and Nobles and Amazon if I can swing it. And yeah, that's pretty much all I got for you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye guys.